business. Who went out of business?
All right.
I was going to give you for the Hanukkah tea.
Peppermint oil is supposed to keep the bees away. Peppermint oil.
Okay.
All right. I'm going to
Go ahead.
start. I'm going to mute all the microphones. Okay. You can all hear me? Thanks. Why have you got your speaker on? Okay. Something's on. All right. Well, welcome once again to everyone. And I just want to update you with the Smile on Seniors 12th anniversary. Just hold on a second. Pinky's got her speaker, her microphone on.
I've got it.
Your speaker on? Hold on a second. I have to go out the office. Can you hear? Okay, good. All right. Can you all hear me? Okay, so when we mention SOS and we had our 12th anniversary, I don't want you to get confused thinking that it's a convention of Morse code interpreters. SOS is not save our souls or whatever it is. SOS is our organization, our group that interacts with the seniors in the valley, and the function was phenomenal. We had a phenomenal turnout. The weather was spectacular, as it is in Phoenix at this time, and Pinky and I and the other 134 volunteers that we have are just raring to go and carry on and do our work and do everything here. So that being said, I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to start the presentation. Okay, share. Okay, there you are. So you have my usual disclaimer that these views are mine. We're not Cabot of Arizona and a Smile on Seniors. So let's go next. Mark this date in your calendar, Tuesday, December the 14th, for the next event. It is pulled back 1 week because I felt it was getting too close to the holidays and people might not be here. So we're going to do December the 14th. The next movie I'm going to highlight is going to be Lansky, the infamous story of Meyer Lansky, who was sought after by the feds, and other movies that I think are worth watching on Amazon is the Jewish Cardinal. And on Netflix, I have sent out an email about this remastered The Lion's Share. It's a fabulous documentary about a South African Zulu song that was stolen by Disney, and very, very entertaining to watch. So once again, welcome everybody.
Sounds like work.
No, tell them I'm in my chair.
Yes, he's just walked in.
This is unexpected. I can't believe I'm actually having lunch with spies. I'm just a salesman.
Exactly. You're civilians the KGB won't be watching.
It would be a real service to Great Britain.
What do you want me to do?
To open a door to the top manufacturers in the West. Well, I've been putting myself in danger.
If this mission was the least bit dangerous, you really are the last man we'd send.
Make sure you wear it while you're in Moscow.
What does this do? Shoot poison darts? Everyone you meet, assume they're KGB.
Every Russian is an eye of the state.
You'll just be a courier.
Just a career for Russian sheep.
From now on, you will be selling one thing. The idea that you are an ordinary businessman and nothing more than an ordinary businessman.
The weapons of war must be abolished before they abolish us.
I'm asking you to stop going to Moscow. I am asking you as your wife.
I want you to get involved.
What if I get caught? They'd execute me, correct?
We can't get him out. If things were the other way around, Penkovsky would abandon you.
He would never leave me to die, and I'm not leaving him. I'm volunteering to bring back the best source of certain intelligence you've got at a time where Russia and America are on the brink of nuclear war.
Maybe we're only two people. But this is how things change.
The true story behind the Courier, a new spy thriller, draws on the fascinating life and whopping lies of one of the UK's most famous intelligence agents. More specifically, you may be reminded of the superior Cold War era spy-swapping 2015 film, Bridge of Spies. Both films are based on real events. You have Russian spies, imprisoned agents, and a swap between Russia and the West. In November 1960, Greville Wynne, a 41-year-old British businessman, sat down for a lunch that would change his life. His dining companion, Dickie Franks, along with CIA agent Emily Donovan, nee Mrs. Maisels, revealed himself to be an officer of the British Secret Intelligence Service, also known as MI6, and asked Wynne for his help. An industrial sales consultant who regularly traveled through Eastern Europe and the Soviet Union, representing British electrical and steel companies. Wynne was told it would be helpful if on his next trip, if he could arrange a meeting with a state committee in Moscow dedicated to developing opportunities with foreigners in science and technology, and report back on his conversations. Despite having no previous experience in intelligence work, Wynne was being recruited to serve as an MI6 agent. Wynne agreed, and during his visit to Moscow the following month, he wound up connecting with Oleg Penkovsky, a lieutenant colonel in the GRU, the Soviet Union's foreign intelligence agency, who was eager to leak high-level military information to Western powers. Penkovsky felt stunted in his career with the GRU and expected that by helping the West for a year or two, he and his family could be relocated and build a better life, and that he would personally be showered with recognition and honor. Wynne went along, slightly concerned about whether Penkovsky was on the level and concerned about putting himself into a dangerous situation, kicking off what would be one of the most productive clandestine operations in Cold War history. Penkovsky's information and Wynne's help in delivering it to British and American intelligence officers would produce mountains of material, play a role in the Cuban Missile Crisis, and land both men in prison. These events serve as the inspiration for the Courier, the new film starring Benedict Cumberbatch as Wynne and Georgian actor Merab Ndidzi as Penkovsky. The film's screenwriter, Tom O'Connor, found Wynne's story of a nobody suddenly becoming a somebody compelling. He was just an ordinary man who got thrust into this extraordinary, life-altering situation that was going to define his existence forever, says O'Connor. The burden of that is hard to imagine. But as he began researching Win's story, he learned that this ordinary man could also tell some extraordinary lies. In the late 60s, and after he had been imprisoned for his spycraft and could no longer assist MI6 or the CIA, the amateur spy authored a pair of books, The Man from Moscow, the story of Win and Penkovsky, and The Man from Odessa, that were riddled with falsehoods. Win, bless him for all his wonderful work, was a menace and a fabricator. He just couldn't tell the truth. It was pathological with him. While it's standard for Hollywood films to take liberties with the facts, insert composite characters, devise imagined conversations, and smooth out timelines to ensure a brisk pace, it's less common for based on a true story movie to have to be more truthful than the source material. Even though Win wasn't exactly a reliable narrator, for what he did during his time as a secret agent, the materials he smuggled from behind the Iron Curtain were the real thing. After the initial meeting in December 1960, Penkovsky provided Win with film of Soviet military documents and later promised more information if an arrangement with a British or American intelligence could be made. Win dutifully passed on the images to his contacts with British intelligence, who established their legitimacy. Thus began their fruitful relationship, one that involved Win hosting Penkovsky in London, who was visiting under the pretense of cultivating new opportunities in the West. On this trip, Penkovsky submitted to hours of interviews with British and American intelligence officers about the Soviet Union's military and political developments. Penkovsky's dynamism and enthusiasm, his wide-ranging and passionate denunciations of the Soviet system and its leaders, illustrated with anecdotes, fascinated and captivated the American and British teams. Never before has there been a Soviet spy like him. Win also enthusiastically embraced his role, enjoying the part of a daring secret agent where he could apply his salesman skills to a higher stakes game. During their visits, Penkovsky and Win would get out on the town, visiting restaurants, nightclubs, and shops under the cover of talking business, with each man proudly showing the other his home country. They made an odd contrast. The short, energetic, and thinly mustached Win, alongside the military bearing of Penkovsky. But there seemed to be a genuine affection between the two, and this friendship is the central focus of the Courier. These guys were in the foxhole together. They each had a secret only the other man knew. They were alone in the world, and with this incredible burden, except for the other man. But the chummy interactions between the agents and Penkovsky's prolific, even reckless acquisition of materials grew increasingly perilous and finally caught the KGB's attention. After a meeting in Paris in September 1961, Penkovsky's next trips were mysteriously canceled at the last minute. When Win visited Moscow in July of 1962, his hotel room and luggage were searched, and he was tailed during his travels. On October the 29th that year, just hours after the Soviets stood down during the Cuban Missile Crisis, Win went to Soviet-occupied Budapest with a traveling exhibition of British industrial goods against the advice of his MI6 handlers. Win would later relate that he walked down the steps of the exhibition pavilion, a car pulled up and 4 men suddenly appeared as they pushed Wynne inside and kidnapped him. He was flown to Moscow, imprisoned, and tried alongside Penkovsky, who had been arrested the week before Wynne entered Hungary. For his treason, Penkovsky was sentenced to death and executed by firing squad just days after the trial ended, though Wynne would later claim he died of suicide. Wynne, despite claiming ignorance of what materials he was smuggling to the West, was sentenced to 8 years in prison. After months of negotiations, the British government was eventually able to arrange a trade of Wynne for the Soviet spy Gordon Lonsdale, who'd been arrested a year before and was serving a 25-year sentence in England. In all, Penkovsky had provided Western intelligence with about 140 hours of interviews and 111 rolls of exposed film, contributing to some 10,000 pages of intelligence reports. The operation was the most productive classic clandestine operation ever conducted by the CIA or MI6 against the Soviet target. And its key to its success was the mustached Courier with no prior intelligence experience. Penkovsky gave a huge amount of detail about what missiles the Soviet had and how old they were, how there were lines for food. It was an extremely vivid portrait of the country and the people within intelligence. He was senior enough that you could sit down with him for hours and he would explain the entire context of how the Soviet intelligence system worked. Among the materials Penkovsky provided Wynne were 4 photographs of plans for construction of sites, missile launching sites in Cuba. This gave American officials a clearer picture of what the Soviets were doing in the region, bringing in medium-range ballistic missiles. It also helped Americans to understand how limited the Soviets' capabilities were in the area. So as tensions grew during the Cuban Missile Crisis, Kennedy knew how much rope he could give Soviet Premier Nikita Khrushchev. Upon his release from prison, Wynne's old life was in tatters. He lost most of his business, and the time spent in the Soviet prison seemed to have caused long-term damage. Seeking ways to parlay the notoriety he received, he became a renter spokesman for all kinds of espionage, making appearances in the media about anything related to spycraft, whether or not it was anything he had experience with. This led to the publication of his dubious memoirs. At the time, they were largely accepted at face value and sold well. Wynne's fabrications ranged from small to huge. In one of his biggest whoppers, Wynne explained that he and Penkovsky took a trip together in a private military jet from the UK to Washington, DC. The two then visited the White House, where President John Kennedy personally thanked them for their service, and the two returned to the UK just 18 hours later. Not only was this account widely denied shortly after publication by members of the CIA and Kennedy's staff, but it would have been against the way espionage is run, keeping the heads of state a safe distance from the details of intelligence work. To top it off, it would have been physically impossible at the time. In 1961, jet travel did not allow someone to fly from the UK to the US and back in 24 hours. Why did Wynne make up so much when the truths of his 18 months as a spy had already been filled with astounding details? Among the explanations are a desire for money or fame and a ruinous case of alcoholism, perhaps even psychological scars left behind in his time in the Soviet prison, or the shame he felt for publicly turning against British intelligence during the trial. That is the result of something all too typical in the intelligence community, something he calls the post-usefulness syndrome. Imagine I recruit you and I tell you that whatever you report to me within an hour will be on the president's desk. You, in your own mind, have developed a sense of self-importance. And when it comes to espionage, it's hard to know who to trust. Unfortunately, Emily Brosnan, nee Mrs. Maisel's performance is flat. Her character feels completely out of place here, as if Emily Donovan were thrown in to inject an American way into a very British story. In her one big scene where she tries to terrify Wynne by describing the 4 minutes he'd have if a nuke were heading for London is unconvincing and doesn't have the reverse psychology effect the film thinks it does. There are 2 points I'd like to make about this particular spy mission. One of the most important and little known facts that Penkovsky supplied the West was the Soviet Union's virtually unlimited supply of titanium. The rest of the world's supply was meager. In the 60s, the US and Great Britain had supersonic spy planes. When these planes flew at 3 times the speed of sound, or Mach 3, the friction of the air over the plane's body created extremely high temperatures. The only material that can withstand this heat is titanium. Titanium was used in 2 of the most famous US spy planes, the Lockheed U-2 Dragon Lady and the Lockheed SR-71 Blackbeard, all needing titanium. All of these developed at the Skunk Works, a secret Lockheed facility in Area 51 in Nevada. I'm interested to know, where were you in '62 when all of this was going on? I was 15 years old in high school. Most of our news was filtered or censored by the South African government. I clearly remember having a tiny AM radio the size of a pack of 20 cigarettes and a wired earpiece with a cord hidden under my sleeve as I listened to the Voice of America to see how far the Soviet ships were going to go and what President Kennedy's response would be. So, what was your experience? I'm going to now unmute the microphone. You may unmute the microphones.
Okay,
And
I will say I was married for 2 years and I had 1 child at that time.
And where were you?
In Skokie, Illinois.
And you followed all of this while it was happening?
No,
Okay. Anyone else? I'd like to know where you were.
Unmute yourself, Rosette.
Rosalind, unmute yourself.
You're muted.
Unmute yourself if you want to
I
talk.
don't have anything great to say. I think I was at the time pregnant with my 4th and was really kind of caught up with the children and knew that what was going on. I mean, I heard it on the radio, but I wasn't really involved with it the way I would be if it happened today, because there were other things that kind of overshadowed everything else. We lived in Pittsburgh at the time.
One of our other viewers, Carol Webner, she's not on today.
You're talking about the crisis in Cuba?
Cuba.
You're
yeah.
talking about the Cuban Missile Crisis, right?
Yeah.
Because I had never heard of this spy thing before until I saw the movie. I knew nothing about it.
Right.
But
That-
the Cuban
That's why it's
Missile,
a spy thing.
pardon?
That's why it's a spy thing.
Oh, okay, so you're talking about where were we during the Cuban Missile Crisis,
Right.
right? Is that what you're talking about? Yeah. Okay, I was teaching in New York City on the Lower East Side, actually, and we found out about it through the office. I get, because within your classroom, you don't get news. And the office knew about it. And as we came down to sign out, they were telling us about it, that this is what happened and we should keep track of what's going on. So.
I was in college and heard
You were-
about it at a sociology class.
Well,
So-
we knew that we knew that Russia was building up the missiles, but it was a standoff between Kennedy and Khrushchev. We had no idea about any spies or anything with the Soviets.
Rosalind was on talking about what she was in. I have a different story. Okay, I was in college and studying Spanish. I became a Spanish teacher, and I remember going to like a cocktail party or something, and these guys were talking to me a lot in Spanish, and turns out that they were Cubans, and they were looking for me to help them during the Cuban missile problem. And I suddenly realized why they were so attentive, and I decided to leave, not to get involved, but it was close. It was close.
That's interesting. Question,
Yeah.
when exactly was the Cuban Missile Crisis? Like what month? It was 62, right? It was in the fall, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
July.
You weren't.
So one
When
of
was
our,
You weren't
October
not in.
No, yeah.
When was it? Because I'm trying to think. I'm thinking I must have been during the school year.
October,
62.
Lori.
It was October?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, okay, because that's what I was trying to remember. Okay.
That was as close as I thought we were coming to war.
Very complicated, yeah.
it just shows you that the information that was provided to Kennedy was enough to give Khrushchev enough rope not to have war. So that's how important it was. So I just wanted to mention one of our Smile on Seniors members who's not on today. She's from South Africa. Her father and mother were visiting Moscow in 1962. And she relates the story where her father, of course, you're a foreigner, so you stick out, and someone bumped into him and gave him a little canister and said, when you leave, please go to the closest US embassy and give them this canister. So
Was it?
he never knew what it was. And she relates that years later, these people contacted her father and thanked him for taking the information across. Your father never knew what it was, but it was offered.
He didn't know. Nobody
knows, but he knew that he was given something. He was extremely afraid when he left Moscow, but he got through and he took the stuff out. So we do have some people who are involved closely with this. So you know, and I remember in South Africa, the only thing we had was Voice of America, and we were listening. And I was at school. I remember clearly. It was our headmaster never allowed us to have a radio at school. That's why it was a tiny little thing, and it ran up my sleeve into the ear. So when I was at school, anything that I could do to break the rules, I did it.
Well, the big thing I think that we were watching was the blockade. That
Yes.
was highly advertised when they blockaded Cuba and they wouldn't let the Russian ships go in.
And the other issue was in the movie itself, in one of the interrogations, they said, why is it so unusual that we put missiles in Cuba when you have missiles in Turkey?
Right.
Yeah.
Really? Huh.
Yeah, they
That's
did.
right.
Mhm,
Well, the answer is it's good for the goose, but not good for the gander.
mhm.
And
Yes,
that's,
didn't they have to take them out of Turkey?
I think they took a few out.
Yeah,
That was the deal.
that was the deal, right?
Uh, so
And we didn't really have to have them in Turkey. Our systems were capable of leaving here and getting there. The
Bless
Russians weren't quite as capable as we were. It turns out, I think that's one of the reasons why they were trying to do what they did, because they were aware of the fact that Turkey was just not a big deal, that the United States was a big deal.
no, but I think the United States always felt that if they could make a mess somewhere else, it was always better than.
Right, right. Yeah.
That was it. And that's happened over and over again.
That hasn't changed.
Not at all. It seems to be a built-in mentality. You know, it doesn't matter the cost.
Political now.
Why not?
I think the part of the movie that we're forgetting about was the end, where the Soviet said in front of a microphone or in front that his associate was not involved in any way. And that's how he got out, because they pinned him as being part of the scheme. And the Russian knew he was going to die, through this camaraderie, saved his life.
Great.
But it's amazing what ordinary people could do. This was an ordinary businessman. Now, when he rose to the circumstance.
Absolutely.
Well, he obviously was a good storyteller. It came naturally to him.
He was a salesman, you know.
That's right.
But what I admire is that what I read about the actor himself, he actually lost a lot of weight in order to be at the end of the movie how he was. And that's dedication to the art of being an actor.
Yeah, either losing weight or putting weight on.
Right.
It's needed.
Jake LaMotta.
Yeah,
It's interesting because
Robert De Niro.
Robert De Niro, when he played Jake LaMotta, put on about 30 pounds
Right.
to play that role.
Right.
That's right.
Right.
The reverse.
It's easier than taking off.
Now
Right.
How many people realized that the Turkish cigarettes were going to do the Russian in?
I don't know.
I knew the
It's
meeting
poison.
when that guy offered the Turkish
Poison.
cigarettes. I knew
They
that.
were,
That's
they were
it.
poisoned.
Yeah.
No, I got the idea.
The cigarette in Russia is a humongous bribe. I was in Moscow in 1989 on business, and everyone, before we left, I went with another business partner of mine. They said, take with each of you 400 cigarettes of Marlboro cigarettes. And at the time, I was in the diamond business, and we went into the diamond office in Moscow, and the guy came out and he's talking, and they had done their research. They knew our family, they knew everything, and nothing happened. And then he went out of the room, and we put one pack of cigarettes on the table, and he came back, and the cigarette disappeared into his pocket. He went out. All of a sudden, he showed us whatever we wanted. Whatever we wanted. And we I think that morning we must have loaded maybe 10 packs of the cigarettes on him. And this was a big yontif for him. It was a big yontif for him. And he was a big shot in the diamond branch there.
I remember that there was a salesman in our neighborhood. My friend's father smoked a lot, and he used to go to Jersey. The taxes were less in Jersey, and a carton of cigarettes was $2. The carton,
Wow.
10 packs, 20 cents.
What year was that?
This was the late 30s, early 40s.
Oh,
Well, $2 was a lot of money then.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it went up a heck of a lot more.
Yeah.
And the value, yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
like everything else.
mhm.
Dr.
So-
Martin was interesting because we as Americans knew nothing about what went on behind the scenes. And you know what?
No.
It makes me think, what don't we know even today?
Yeah.
We need to
Right.
know the whole story.
But we can't know everything. That's the business.
Right. Right.
We actually went to a dinner party and we're sitting next to this guy. He was wearing bib overalls and, not dressed up at all. And it turns out that in college, he went to Yale and he was recruited by the OSS. That's the predecessor of the CIA. And he worked for the OSS.
The other little bit of sidelight on that, when Charlie Chaplin was dating Una O'Neill, he was dating Una O'Neill's roommate.
Whoa. Boy, Stan, you sure go back a long time.
Yeah.
Well, it shows what they'll go through to get the information.
Right.
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 And then the other thing that was interesting about the movie is how they got information from Russia to London or to the States. Everything had to be couriered by hand. And if you think of it today, I mean, in an instant, it'll be on the other side. We don't have that. In that day, it may have taken 2 weeks or 3 weeks before that info arrived on the other side. Today, if it's not within a minute or two,
You can fax it.
That fax it, just send it.
Oh, yeah.
Take the picture and just send it.
Yeah,
well,
the
they
question
just
is, they can hack your today. They can hack your emails.
they can hack anything. So they have the CIA and MI6 and those places. They would have secure communications. And files would be encrypted and all that.
We say that. On the other hand, the government has been hacked.
Depends which part of the government. The part of the government that doesn't get enough money gets hacked. The CIA and the FBI, I'm not sure that the information or the top information is being hacked. I think it's coming.
They're not gonna let you know if it was.
I
I
don't
felt sorry for the Russian spy who really wanted to come to America, and he,
With his family.
with his family,
Right.
never made it out.
No.
Right. So
He gave up everything.
And his life.
He gave up absolutely everything.
Yep.
But to Penkovsky's credit, he did prevent a nuclear war.
Yes, he did.
That's for sure. So sometimes the hero does not always live to the end, but he did definitely contribute to history, and he definitely contributed to preventing a nuclear war.
It's not highly publicized, actually. I didn't even know about this except for this movie.
Correct.
That's why we have a discussion group. Carry on.
There's another aspect. I mean, during the war, everyone felt that FDR was a hero. And
Right.
FDR's relationship with the Jews during the war,
terrible.
he was really an anti-Semite. I mean, he prevented the ship from coming in with Jews.
Yeah, yeah,
They cut the quota coming in from Europe at the time. They refused to bomb. They were bombing
The tracks.
German sites. They refused to bomb any of the train tracks going to the camps. I mean, this is, you know, it was, and the State
All of that-
was notorious anti-Semitic.
All of that is true, but there were good things that he did too, a lot of them.
And
Not particularly for the Jews.
And the Jews, he wasn't good for. There's no doubt about that. I know my mother worshipped him, and I don't. When he died, it was like God had gone, you know.
Yeah.
But then we found out what he had done. However, he did do some very good things, social humanitarian things, but not for the Jews. But he got us out of the Depression. He put in all kinds of things we are benefiting from today.
Yes.
So,
Well, you know,
it's not all good and it's not all bad. For us, he was all bad, yes.
But it is
And
interesting.
his State
because
Department.
when Norman Thomas ran on the socialist ticket, he got, I think, 1 million votes that time, and he was considered really far left. And a lot of the things that he came up with were adapted by FDR.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
so if you remember the last movie, The Devil Next Door, the first lawyer that was appointed to Demjanjuk, his father was in charge of one division that was stopping the Jews from coming to the States. His father was
that the American lawyer? Was that the American lawyer? Interesting.
His father was a judge that was passing all kinds of things to prevent Jews from coming to the States. And I'd have to look back at my notes to see exactly the department or the organization that he held the top office in.
Well, it's happening today with immigration from countries where they're being abused and different things, and they're not allowing them in.
Yeah, but it's not a Jewish thing anymore.
No, well,
Yeah, but
it's still not good.
no, it's still human beings trying to.
Right.
That's right.
That's the number one question.
By the way, with the fast communication